left our episodic view of communication, we were talking about all things interpersonal. And remember, we've been building with the textbook and also with each unit the concept of your own sort of brain, your cognitive function, your own sense of self. So we started with intrapersonal communication, INTRA, when we talked about how you perceive things in the world, the schema up against which your worldview is formed, the type of thoughts that you have in your head about new information entering it and whatnot. And then now we're moving over to interpersonal communication, INTER, and that prefix means amongst or between. And remember, we said our basic unit of interpersonal communication is called a dyad. That's a two-person unit upon which all intrapersonal communication is built upon, meaning that we take the tenets of that original dyad and we turn one-to-one into one-to-many for public speaking, our one-to-satellite groups for organizational communication, our one-to-satellite groups and many with roles for family communication and workplace communication. So it's still built off of that basic kind of one-to-one premise of a dyad, and then everything is kind of tacked on there. But with the original speaker or communicator one being usually the focus as we tune in on why you think the way that you think, what sort of stimuli are you interpreting and receiving schematically, and then how that shows up or manifests in your dyadic or one-to-one relationships. Remember, we've been building a profile, and on the left side, we had like denotative meaning, individualistic perception, the concept of concrete language, using things that are more direct, low context listening and hearing, and even monochronic time. If we are on the right side of that paradigm or that profile, then we're interested in more of the connotative, our coded meanings associated with words, some more vague or abstract, indirect thoughts. We have more of a high context quotient, meaning that we won't take just the words that are physically said or that are uttered in a way that can be deciphered physiologically with your audio receptors, but also like what temperature it is outside, how the two people know each other that are talking, the backstory, the thought of the future as well. And we also have, if we are high context in that way, then we're likely polychronic, which means that we're doing kind of more than one thing at a time. Because think about the opposite in its most basic form. So if we are more low context and we only have to focus on just the words that are being said, then that's just one thing at a time to do, really, is stop everything, just focus on those words, and those words are the only thing that's really going down in the city. But if you are having to listen to the words that are said, watching how the person's face looks, thinking about the weather that is outside, thinking about where you will be in 2 hours, where that person will be in 2 hours, what happened 2 hours before then that could have prevaricated this person to say this thing, then that's a whole bunch of things at the same time. So you're already doing like polychronic or the semblance of multitasking just by deciphering the context of communication with another person. And so when we got rightly into our interpersonal communication unit, we started with some theory. And remember, we have said now 2 whole class periods that these are theories and not necessarily proven sort of axiomic objective facts, because there's always going to be an exception or someone who doesn't quite conform to what that profile says. For example, you may have someone that is largely denotative, low context, concrete. That person is let's say monochronic, has all of that left side stuff going on. But then if it's for money, if it's work, and you have to kind of be loose in the open concept office and make rapport with people and read between the lines and do all this political stuff, then you can do that for a check. You just don't prefer it, or that's not your origin, and the other way around as well. So we know that there will be exceptions, and these are things that just guide our understanding of how interpersonal relationships manifest and then how they are managed in our society. And our society is like a big grand term, but it really just means what we know currently as human communication behavior and what evidences we see thereof in human communication and writings that are current. So that would mean other locales, other countries, other places. Just how are people talking to each other? How are we communicating? And y'all, let me tell you about a throwback right quick. So in the day of the dinosaurs, when there were lots of print magazines and they weren't all electronic, like every third article was, all you need in your relationship is communication. All you need is communication, as if communication is what we call a panacea or something that solves everything. So as soon as you just slap communication on it, then it's like a clearance tag. It's just going to fly off the shelves. Everything's going to be Gucci. All we need to do is talk about it. And we just know that that's not true. You can't communicate your way out of everything. Like if somebody's like, I hate your face and I want to punch it, they're like, you know what, let's just talk for a minute. And maybe you'd be able to talk about it, but that thing kind of like already happened. No problem, Tony. And I'm sure your classmates are with you in this effort. Everybody's got to go to work. So, or lots of people have to go to work. So we understand that. No problem. So we're looking at the theories to explain how we get things such as sort of a miscommunication or a disruption in what our expectations are for how someone speaks to us or what they say to us and how it impacts our connection between them. Then the theories discuss for us how it is or why it is that we get into relationships, what relationships are, their origin, premises, and then the concept of how we manage the concept of certainty, uncertainty, development, and disillusion. And we went through all of that on last class, so this should be very, very quick. We discussed that a relationship is just any connection between two things. And so, in terms of speech communication scholarship, we say the relationship is any connection between two people that's usually defined in its origin as a relationship of circumstance or choice. And we said circumstantially, you didn't really have control over whether or not to be in relationship with this person, either by birthright because this is your family, or this happens to be your neighbor, or you must go to school. And so this is the kid that's sitting next to you in this classroom. Or we can say relationships of choice, which are usually affinity or enmity based, where we said that affinity is feelings of, or excuse me, includes feelings of likingness, tenderness, that we prefer to be around this person. But then enmity is also like an enemy or an antagonistic relationship. And so you can have an arch nemesis or a rival or someone that you enjoy, like being a hater to you or the opposite. So you can kind of feel like you're motivated to be great. Or I don't know why people put enemies in that position if they're not, organically there. But you can do that too. That can be a type of relationship that you can open up, that your single platform in the relationship is just to hate on this person. So you could do that, or that person could do it to you, or you could just feel like that. We talked about Khaled concerning that on last class as well. But we learn between the relationships of circumstance and choice, one is so much easier to study than the other if we're talking about human communication motivations. Because relationships of choice, if you're just locked into it, and it doesn't mean that you wouldn't choose to be in it if you could, but you didn't get to choose it. So it's really moot to talk about why you would choose to get in this relationship. If you just happen to be born into it, then what in the world are we even talking about? But when we're discussing relationships of choice, we are trying to find out what was it about this particular person and their face and their eyebrow and the way that they speak to you that was attractive to you in some way. And remember that I'm always cleaning up language when we say things like intimacy, and we're talking about closeness between two people. We're just talking about the degree of feelings of affinity and the really secretive nature of information. So, how much personalized information, in depth information will you self disclose, meaning provide voluntarily to this other person, and the opposite. So, that's intimacy, really, is just feelings of closeness to a person. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic oriented relationship, it can just be a friendship, or even your family members are the most intimate with you in your lives before you start developing more of those relationships of choice outside of your home. And we do the same thing when we talk about attraction as well. So when we say that we're attracted to another person or attracted to the concept of being in a relationship with them, it doesn't mean, even though I've been using it as an example, it doesn't mean that you necessarily do like what their face looks like, or you want to put your face on their face, or that you have a romantic interest in this person. But you can be attracted to someone that has like a really cool and loud laugh that you hear out at a party, and you're like, wow, she must lead a really interesting life because she is really having a blast. And the joke wasn't even that funny. Or you could see someone that has a t-shirt of a band that you like and say, oh, I didn't know that there was anybody in here that, is old enough to like Slipknot or whatever it was. And so you can be attracted to commonalities, proximity. So we talked about on last class being attracted to playing with the kids that are next door or across the street from your house because they're there. It's not that, you would have met them in another space and clicked and been friends, but since you don't have a car, you're 7, and those are the little boys across the street, you're going to go play with the little boys across the street. So proximity can do it. Even the opposite of when we say like the physicality of attraction, that's beauty or aesthetic based. sometimes you can think that somebody doesn't look great and you can want to fix them or change them, or if you're in a 90s movie, turn them into the prom king by the end of the semester. So you want kind of a fixer upper, or you want to look like the Beyonce in the middle of the party and surround yourself with people that you think aren't aesthetically keeping up with you in the standard of beauty that your society endorses. So there can be all sorts of reasons that people are attracted to others. They can decide that there is a reward. For instance, if I'm friends with this person that seems to take all the notes in class and is cool with the teacher as a gatekeeper and knows, the test dates and all that stuff, then I can skip class and then I'll just, convene with this person as my friend. She'll hook me up. So we have a reward system in place, or any sort of benefits that go along with these things. So, in the theories, because remember, we started out with just a definition of relationships: circumstance versus choice, which is usually kinship or just situation, versus affinity or enmity. And then we say that those relationship theories of why we get into these relationships or what we do within them is usually centered in the scholarship for relationships of choice, because it really wouldn't make sense for us to figure out why we got into our own life just by not asking to be born, but just being born. Like, that would make no sense. So in relationships of choice, we learned the interpersonal needs theory. Remember, you got the guns for that one, that talked about the three major motivators for entering a relationship. And they were affection, inclusion, and control. That we want to have feelings of liking towards another person and someone to like us too. So we want to feel flattered or cared for in that way. We want to be included, so we want to be paired off or in a group, because as human animals, we are pack animals. And what we learned way back at the beginning of the semester when we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we discussed that love and belongingness is a core need of humanity, and it's okay to exile yourself up to the mountains in Phoenix. But if somebody else kicks you out and puts you into exile, then we usually have feelings about it. So we can walk alone if we want to, but it feels a whole lot different when no one wants us or doesn't want us to be in community or in the group. So we like to be included. And then the last we said was control, and we took that in the most denotative way, just like we cleaned up intimacy and attraction. That when we say control, we just think about altering the course thereof. So you want someone to be a second opinion to you, or to hold you accountable for something, or you want someone to which you feel that they have a say in your life, or that you have a say in their life in some way. So, not necessarily that you want to boss someone and tell them to hold your purse and make them do things, but rather I want to know that I have to cook dinner. So, I'll have to feed myself and I have to cook dinner, but I'll be more inclined to just go to sleep without eating unless I know there's someone else I have to cook dinner for too. So, I might as well go ahead and cook dinner for the both of us, since, this person's got to eat and I've got to care for this person. And then you end up getting to eat too. So control just really means a level of purpose or accountability, even that is held up with a relationship of choice or motivation to get into it. Then we talked about the social penetration theory at length, where we said it has two levels. Kind of looks like a donut with a circle on the inside, which is your depth, and then the outside circle, kind of looking like a target sign, is the breath level. And you got a whole bunch of people and a whole bunch of topics that you will engage with impersonally, IMPERSONAL. So when we're in impersonal communication, that prefix IM again is just really what we call phatic communication, to have a fancy word with it, PHATIC. And that just means to us that it's like hi and goodbye. Somebody sneezes and you say bless you. You toast, you say salute. If someone holds a door for you, you say thank you. So those things that are just rote kind of, quick communication, or just being polite, or what we say the smallest of small talk. You're paying the person that's the, customer service rep at the gas station, and you just say, oh, it sure is chilly outside. And they're like, yeah, it is. And so you're just being polite and engaging in rapport. You're going to have thousands, some people, of those people that you just say hi and goodbye to at the Starbucks and the toll booth operator and your kid's teacher and whoever, if, you don't engage them that way. But only a few of them will make it into that depth level, really knowing a lot of information about you as a person, knowing about your deep, dark secrets, knowing about what you like on your salad if you are not there when it's time to order it. So only that person will know what you're allergic to, where your favorite birthmark is, the plate lunch that you get at this other place, what you did in Cancun that you can't tell anybody else. That person knows all of the business. And that's because you and this person have used self-disclosures, meaning things that you volunteer that are true and about you, in order to grow that bond. All right, so in order to talk to one another. And scholarship is really concerned right now in communication about evaluating that in not so much oral narratives as people used to volunteer for studies where they would put a recording device on their landline phones, and that was crazy pants crazy. That would hear people, or excuse me, it would list in a content analysis of what people were talking about. And what they found out is that if you're talking to like a hi and goodbye person, you can still tell that person like a whole dearth of information that is highly personalized. So you can just talk to the person at, let's say, the electric company and tell them, oh, yeah, I just got a divorce and my daughter's in rehab and it looks like they're going to cut my water off. So at least I wanted to make sure this bill was paid. And that other person that's getting paid there to listen was like, oh, man, that's rough. Sorry about that. That's awful. But anyways, your bill is $89.95. So they just kind of like spit all this stuff out, but they're not expected to retain it or to internalize it or to spit it back to you because you're probably never going to talk to that one particular person ever again, depending on, what kind of industry this is or how small it is. But when we're discussing the true interpersonal partner, the person that you're sharing this kind of stuff with, what they found in the recordings is that you actually talk less. And that's what I want to ask y'all about. So we didn't do really an icebreaker on this morning, but I want to ask you how you feel about that and if you believe in that part of the research study that's built off of our theory of self-disclosure, which is called the social penetration theory, that says you got a bunch of people and topics on the outside circle the breadth level, and the inner core depth level will only be penetrated or accessed by a far fewer amount of people that make it through that self-disclosure kind of maze into your schema. And so what the research was posturing is that if this person is truly your BFF, if that person is your best friend or your romantic significant other of a long time that you're communicating with pretty often, that you're actually saying less things to this person. Like you're not describing things in detail. You're not talking as much as you do to like the 5 other people that are just like sort of your friends, and you spend fewer moments talking to the person that's actually your core relationship. Do y'all believe that's true, or does that sound weird? What do y'all think? Do you think you talk less to your significant other, whether it's platonic or romantic, than you do to like strangers in the street? What do y'all think?
Um, I think I think the most I would choosing to talk more whoever closer, like significant like partners. Instead, I won't talk to the stranger because like he have no idea what I've been through, and then for what I already been like the friends that closest to me already been know that like some background information, and I don't need to let the stranger know if that like maybe depressing news or maybe just happy news, like you don't have to. I feel like you don't have to bring other people to involve it to like just a completely stranger, like what they're going to do about it, nothing. But if you're like, let's say, okay, just talking to my best friend, he know what to do, like, or like she know what to do, and then she know what to say, and then she know like, hey, this may be the way out or something. So that's why I think.
All right, that's a valid perspective. So you're not trying to belabor or burden a stranger. They're not going to know all this stuff anyway. So what is the point? That makes sense. We have any other classmates that agree or disagree with Frank or want to tell us your perspective? Okay, don't everybody talk over each other at once. All right, so what the scholarship says is there's validity in what Frank just said. However, and I know this however doesn't feel great with a comment after it. However, when we say that we're talking less to our significant other, it's kind of that same thing that you just mentioned in its mirror form. Because that person knows all the backstory, and because, for instance, they were there for whatever it is that you're describing, you don't really have to go into as much detail with this person as you would a stranger or someone that you don't know. So let's say that you come into work, or not even a stranger, but just someone that you're in an impersonal relationship with. Let's say that you come into a work or into your work, and your coworker is like, hey, why were you late today? And you're like, oh my gosh, it was so crazy because my car has been having this check engine light on for like the past 2 weeks. And okay, first of all, let's just start with it's a 2006 Honda Civic, so it was already kind of on its last leg. But I'm trying to save up to buy myself, a Phantom. I'm just really trying to stunt and do some big things. So I was just riding this out for this time, and so I live like all the way past Highway 6, and there's so many lights on that street, and so you're having to go over like all of these details to contextualize or to give your coworker this information that your significant other already knows all of this stuff. And so when that person texts you, WYD, you're just like, car acted stupid this morning. It was whack. And that person knows exactly what you're talking about. They know how old your car was. They know why it's so old and so raggedy. They know what street you had to go down. They know what impact it has on your job if your boss is already like one of those people that cares that you're late or not. So that person kind of knows all of that backstory already. So you don't have to say it over again. So we end up doing a lot more elaboration and explanation for people that we don't know than the person that was kind of sitting with us in the moment or knows all of those things about us. So your preference in talking to people, like you would prefer likely to talk to your significant other more, your life partner more, but by volume, you're going to end up talking to other people more just by virtue of having to explain your life to every single person that you meet. So you're going to have to explain who you are, what's happening, what's going on in the city. So when we get to the theory that describes to us social penetration, breath level on the outside, depth level on the inside, the vehicle or the pathway that gets us from one section to another is self-disclosure. We said you telling your stuff about you and that person telling their stuff about them. This one's going to hurt just a little bit. Okay, so apologies. Think about the concept of a best friendship. Okay, we're best friends. Be best friends, not with me necessarily, because I'm kind of a gossip and I'm old. But you have your own best friend, maybe. And tell me in the chat or unmute yourself if you don't have a best friend. One will be assigned to you. Alrighty. So if we've got a best friend out there, think about that concept. Can you have a person that you are that person's best friend, but that person is not your best friend? Or must it be mutually reciprocal, meaning that the feeling of one must match identically the feeling of another? Let me ask it again. And when I say it's going to hurt, some of us are going to have some hard truths today. We're understanding that, wait a minute, is she my best friend or am I just her best friend? What's happening? And so, is it possible that the person that you consider to be your best friend does not maybe consider you to be that person's best friend? What do y'all think? Y'all don't make Frank do all the work just because he's trying to get me to be quiet by answering. Somebody's got a best friend out there that has found out some things today just in that thought.
I think it's possible. Yeah.
Okay, so you can have a best friend and that person's or you're not that person's best friend?
Yeah. I mean, like, it just like if you count him out, like that's what I feel like that's what you think the most is you can now like make people feel like okay, so just because I put you on my best friend doesn't mean he have to put you on his best friend list. Like it just like it depends on the other people and also depends on yourself. How do you respect and also like maybe you're just maybe like talking person you like to share lives, but on the best friend that you think he maybe not that weird. He probably just think, hey, okay, so he just my friend. He talk a lot. He just share his life. I'm just here being nice. So if he really knows me, he wouldn't have done that. It's just like, yeah, it's possible.
Just possible. And Sarah, thank you for your comment in the chat. I think all of y'all are just thinking about it too. So thank you for that comment. It is true. Or the scholarship at least supports that friendship is usually measured in actions and imagined sentiments. So we see what a person does or how they perform, and then we also project onto them the way that we think that that person feels about us. And so there are plenty of times where people perform actions for a person if that's what type of relationship that they need. So they'll take that person to the airport, they'll let you borrow money, they'll walk your dog for you, they'll check on your mom while she's sick, they'll do all of these things or perform these services. And then the person says, yeah, that's my best friend. And you're like, no, I just do that for all of my neighbors. We're not necessarily best friends. I just am a service person. Like, I'll just do all of the things. That doesn't mean I'm telling you my deep, dark secrets or that I count you as my best friend. Actually, my dog is my best friend or whatever it is. So we can have sort of a mixed match, also based on what we learned on last class with our stair-step approach to development and disillusion. Because we said that one person can feel like we're just kind of getting to know each other, and the other person's like, we have been locked in a relationship for the past 2 years. We have known each other. We've sat next to each other in class every day. I gave you the answers to the homework. I walked with you to the nurse that time you had a fever. So that person has like all of these actions and moments that they have collected, but maybe it's not that serious to this person on the other side. So you have to think, young people, about what your ethical responsibility is. If you feel like it's lopsided, and we'll get to that theory in just a minute, it's called the social exchange theory. So if you feel like it's lopsided, like maybe you're putting more disclosure, more actions, more imagination for how that other person is feeling than the other person is, then maybe it's time to do the discount double check and find out if you are being fulfilled and satisfied in this relationship. And if this person feels as if it's okay to take these things for granted, or if it's warranted that you provide all of the things for them the way that you do. So, questions or comments so far about our definition of relationships, the concept of relationships of circumstance versus choice, and our recap of the social penetration theory and its vehicle, self disclosure. Anyone have anything at all? Alrighty. Now, Hollering adds our handout that is in the file section that is entitled Relationships. So it says, it'll say like Relationship Study Guide or something like that. Let me share the screen right quick. And there are some theory that are listed here at the bottom before we get back into the stages of coming together and coming apart, also known as the stages of relationship development and dissolution. We'll discuss those in just a bit, but we're scrolling down to our theory so we can include some new ones that we're going to recap the first two of uncertainty reduction theory and uncertainty reduction management theory, and then we'll add to them a couple of new ones. And also remember, you have an explicit description of social penetration theory here too. So you're welcome to look at that as well whenever you get a chance. So we say that in our relationship, before we decide, yes, whether we realize we're doing it or not, before we say, oh, I'm kind of squinting at that person, I guess we have some classes together, we should probably at least speak and say what's up to one another. Before we even start making those decisions, sometimes we're just observing a person, just kind of looking at them, seeing if we recognize them or if it seems as if we would be compatible just even to hold a conversation. Like some people just need a buddy for whatever the moment is. So think about the concept, is there a such thing? Or I'm not going to ask you because y'all aren't, you're putting poor Frank through it and answering, and it took like a lot just to put some words in the chat today. So I understand it's cold, it's early, nobody really wants to be dealing with it. So that's cool. I'll just talk to me, no problem. So I'm going to tell you there is a such thing as the temporary friend. So think about that you're traveling, for instance, and maybe you're traveling by yourself and you bump into somebody on the plane that you're sitting next to, and you're like, oh, are you stopping in Denver? And they're like, oh no, actually I'm continuing on in California. I'm going to California too. I have a layover as well. Oh, okay. So then y'all get off the plane together. You go and buy a $17 cheeseburger during your 2-hour layover. You try to get your seats next to each other to get to California. Maybe you exchange phone numbers. Maybe you don't. Maybe you never see that person ever again in your life. But that was just a touchstone for you, or kind of a buddy to hang out with during that particular experience. Or let's say you have to go to a mandatory training for work and you kind of buddy up with a person that you're going to sit next to, talk mess about the boss with, go to lunch together, do the breakout activity together, and then say goodbye. And then maybe you just see that person's name and email for the rest of the year or whatever, but you still don't connect. So you can have the such thing as a temporary friend that is situation based. And we know that whether we think that this person is only going to be for just a couple of moments, y'all. So, okay, I'm teaching in a different place, as you can see, and I'm looking out this window and I wonder like what type of party is happening out there. So my neighbor across the street has German Shepherds, and I think that all German Shepherds are cops, and they are like all over the street out there. So they're just patrolling. I don't know what's happening. What's more interesting is that my dog friend is in the house and she hasn't made a peep. She hasn't said anything in the world. So I don't know if she's just not snitching or what. I don't know what's happening. But usually she at least says like, hey, there's dogs afoot, and that is not happening. So thoughts and prayers for Olive. Let's hope that she's doing all right. Maybe she's just snoring. All right, y'all. So now that you know about my relationship and my discrepancy arousal that's happening outside the window, what I'm trying to do right now is demonstrate the concept of uncertainty reduction theory to you, because uncertainty reduction theory says that as human animals, we are nosy and we're always trying to figure out what is going on. So we will bring in concepts that have not been said. We will project or imagine what could be going on. We are going to use our previous knowledge and our schema, kind of open up a certain folder. So when I see outside my window and I say, oh, and so the first thing, as soon as I see movement, I already start having to make a category of what is this thing. in the perception process. Remember, we discussed selection, organization, and interpretation. So I had to say, all right, there's something moving. That is a dog. And then I have to interpret that's a German Shepherd, probably one from across the street. I don't know if Tony knows that he's out. Okay, so that's it. So you have to think of why or what's next. Why is my dog not barking? What's happening? So in uncertainty reduction theory, we learn that in relationships, we do exactly the same thing. So we see a person that's sitting in class and are like, well, this person's smart enough to get in this school like I was. So apparently we could be peers or contemporaries. And it looks like maybe we're in the same program. And yeah, this person's kind of short like me. So, we wouldn't be able to have like the symbiotic, she gets the things from the low shelf and I get the things from the top shelf. We'll just have to be short together and ask for help to get things from the top shelf. But that's cool. And then maybe in 10 years after we get matching tattoos and we stand at each other's wedding, we could go to vacation and you're like, whoa, there's a lot of stuff that just happened. But so uncertainty reduction means kind of rolling through the possibilities of what friendship looks like or partnership looks like with this person. And then the way that we manage those things, and that's a seminal theory in speech communication, meaning a base theory that guides all other theory in the discipline, and that's Berger and Calabrese's 1975 theory of uncertainty reduction. And then its companion theory, that uncertainty reduction management, talks to us that about the scenario that I just gave you, whether it was me looking at the German Shepherds outside of the window or this person imagining what his, her, their life could be with this person that just happens to be sitting in their class, those are more passive oriented ways to manage that uncertainty. So instead of, just thinking, or excuse me, instead of just thinking the thought as I did of why the dogs are outside, or this person saying, oh yeah, we could probably kick it. We probably speak the same language. They like the stuff that I like, and we could probably be good friends. So when that person's imagining all that, or I'm kind of creating a backstory about the dogs being at work maybe and trying to find a suspect out there, I don't know. When you do that, it's passive. Or you could be active and think about what happens in our community and our society when someone is actively trying to reduce uncertainty and how that connects to and what it says about power, especially in impersonal relationships. Now, the crux of what we've been talking about so far is interpersonal. We're talking about how you would behave or how you would reduce uncertainty with a person that's impersonal for right now, but has the potential to switch into an interpersonal relationship based on your participation and desire and that person's participation and desire. But when we use active uncertainty reduction management theories amongst impersonal people that we probably do not imagine that we'll have an interpersonal relationship with, that's how we get a designation such as the one that I'm going to put in the chat. And then we're going to talk about it. Now, URT stands for uncertainty reduction theory. So I want to make sure this one is, URMT for uncertainty reduction management theory. I can't spell it. I'm sorry. All right, I put it in the chat. So when we go through an active sort of uncertainty reduction management level, then that can code or be read to other people as being a Karen and being culturally sensitive in our description. Has anybody ever heard of the term Karen before? Okay, likely we have on social media, or even it's made it to the evening news. And what does Karen do? Okay, so Karen is supposed to be minding the business that pays this person, right? Karen is supposed to be on their own, doing their own thing. And here is regular person number 4 walking down the street, doing what they're supposed to be doing, not messing with anybody. And here comes Karen. Karen wants to see your license and registration. Like, she's a cop. She wants to know if you're supposed to be there or if it's a him Karen. I don't know what you call a him Karen. But if we're thinking about a person who's really just going to be in the mix in your business for absolutely no reason at all, there's no conclusion that's going to satisfy this person other than they're really making a counterfeit effort, not so much even to ask you what you're doing, why you're doing this thing, or to really reduce uncertainty, but instead really to install the certainty that the power dynamic is still stable or in check. So this means if I were to look at the dogs that are outside of this window and I would say, "Oh, class, we got to stop this really quick. Sorry, y'all. Let me put you on pause really quick. Turn this alarm off. Go out there. Hey, dogs. Dogs aren't supposed to be running around here because it's the rule. The HOA says that dogs can't be running around here. Now the dog isn't bothering me whatsoever. I don't know why the dog isn't bothering my dog, but the dog isn't bothering me at all. I have no to be idiomatic, expressively about it. I have no dog in this fight. There is no reason for me to come out of my space to police what's happening out there right now. I'm in no danger. My property's not in danger. Nothing's in danger. But instead, I want to exert the authority to be able to say, I know what the rule is. Someone is breaking the rule and they need to be punished or penalized for this thing. So think about your uncertainty reduction management theory and how it can be absolutely advantageous for you to be active. If there is a person that is in class with you and you've seen this person, as you mentioned, in two other classes, and you think that you might be able to hold a conversation with them or be friendly in the space, I absolutely endorse as a loudmouth to be the one that goes first and goes up to the person and was like, "Hey, I saw you in my other classes. My name is Professor Rayner. Are you from around here? I was thinking that maybe we should try to, like be friendly with one another if you're open to that. Are you cool with me sitting and let's making a conversation?" And that person hopefully will feel comfortable in saying, you seem cool. Cause I mean, of course I'm cool. You seem cool, but I just was kind of trying to get into this book right quick. So I'm going to read this book and maybe I'll see you at lunch. Or no, I'm not really a big talker. So, but I thank you. And yeah, next time I see you in class, the other class, I'll wave to you. So that person should feel okay in being just as counteractive by saying, no, I don't want to engage in a temporary relationship with you, or I don't want to be a potential interpersonal communication partner. You can do that actively in other ways where you can, just directly ask a question of your professor or a coworker, or you can ask for a point of information. Those are active ways to say, wait a minute, so are we talking about a river or an ocean? It's like, what do you mean we're talking about beavers? Like, are there beavers in the ocean? Well, not really. Okay, so we're talking about a river then. Well, technically, it's a lake. You're like, oh my goodness, now we're going to a whole different thing. So you can ask for what you want. This is not to dissuade you at all from being active. Being active solves problems, and it absolutely helps you to establish the feeling. Remember, it's just feeling as if you're certain. But if you are weaponizing that against someone or someone is doing it to you, think about the concept of what we learned in our verbal communication chapter. That's kind of like a counterfeit question. So remember when we said that you can come out completely and totally dressed, and one of your fake friends can say, "Are you going to wear that?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna. It's cold outside. It's like 40 degrees, but I mean, you're gonna. Okay, no, I'm not saying anything. I was just asking if you're gonna wear that." And you're already wearing it, so they know that you're gonna wear it, and they know since you were almost out of the door that your plan was to wear it to location B. But they're really just saying that to you in order to suggest to you or let you know without really claiming it that they disapprove of your sartorial choice, which is your wardrobe, what you're wearing. So they don't like it or they don't want you to wear it, and that's why they have formed it into a question. And sometimes we confuse that uncertainty reduction management theory with either the asking or the non asking of questions being allayed with interest. If that Karen comes up and says, "What are those dogs doing out here? You got to do something about this," and starts knocking on doors, is that person really as concerned for the safety of the dogs? Is that person concerned with everybody following the rules? Are they really trying to find out to whom these dogs belong? Or are they trying to flex and be able to say, "I'm going to hit you with Article 2, Clause 7 of the deed agreement that says you can't have these dogs out here"? And then we have the opposite. Now, some people are not feeling loved or honored unless someone is using active methodology. So if that person is more passive and doesn't really ask questions, but instead just observes things or wants them to come out, that information come out organically, then that person can kind of be read as disinterested, and say, "Well, I always come and I blah, 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 and I tell you all about my life, but you're not really telling me about your life." And the person's like, "You're not really asking me any questions about me. You're just talking about you." Oh, okay. So how was your day? It was all right. Now, there are just some people that are short speeched, okay? And have y'all noticed that at all? That sometimes there's a flip flop, like there's a dominant communicator, and that's a dominant speaker, really, and then someone that's a little less communicative or is more the subordinate speaker. That person has just a little bit of things to say. Is, are y'all old enough for Phineas and Ferb to do a throwback? Okay, so this one person does the plan and the talking, does all the stuff, and the other person's in the cut, just as interested, just as involved, just as in trouble if Candace finds out, but was not really going to say anything. So it's up to you to find that balance. All right. So, how you're going to manage your own uncertainty reduction. Are you a person that's going to tell people things really by asking questions, which is signaling to them what you feel or what power you feel that you have? Or are you really genuinely interested in whatever that answer is? You're really going to ask a person to get to know them on what it is. Questions or comments about uncertainty reduction theory, its management as active or passive, or the concept of Karen and how we're weaponizing questioning to really show our positionality and not so much to obtain the information that it seems that we're asking. Questions or comments? All righty. Next, we move into our social exchange theory that we said that we were going to discuss. And our social exchange theory is really a mathematical oriented cost benefit analysis. So, what you're doing in the sort of backwards equation that you see on the screen here is determining the satisfaction of your relationship based on what you put into it, which is known as a cost, versus what you get out of it, or subtracting, what you get out of it, which is the reward. So let's say that in order for you to get, like if we did it with another human behavior besides speech communication or relationships, and we said, alrighty, I get paid $100 a day, but then it's going to cost me $10 worth of gas, $2 worth of, or let's go $3 worth of toll booth fees, and then I'm going to have to buy lunch every day for $5. Is it worth it for me to go and make, this amount of money, this $75 or whatever it is it going to be worth it for me to get $75 or $80 after I subtract those things? And you're like, yeah, it is. Okay, I'll take it. I'll take the deal. Okay, so I'll do that thing or not. So if you're trying to find out like how much it costs you to go to work, which is a real thing, okay, so think about how much, let's say you have little ones that daycare is going to cost, how many miles is it going to be, how many hours away from your house you're going to have to spend for that day, how much actual take-home pay that you're going to have. You measure, does it make sense for me financially to take this job knowing that after I deduct all of those costs, my reward will be this particular salary? Yeah, okay, it makes sense, I'll do it. Or no, that makes absolutely no sense, so I'm not going to do it. And in relationships, we have to define first what we consider to be a cost or a reward. Because if we're talking about what a relationship can cost, and when I have students face to face, I'll ask them, what does it cost to be in a relationship? And y'all, some of the answers that I get, they're like, your sanity, your 401k, okay, all of your money. It's going to cost you your best friend because he's not going to hang out with you anymore because you're always up under her. It's going to cost you having to listen to a mother-in-law that hates your guts. It's going to cost you your cat because she's allergic to it, so you have to give it to your neighbor. It's going to cost this. And you're like, whoa, that's one relationship it sounds like we're talking about. But do think about it in those terms of what you have to put into it. You do have to put in time. That can be a cost. You do have to put in attention to that person, maybe even affection when you don't feel like it, and nothing that's non-consensual. I'm not mentioning that, but just even listening to a person's day and you really don't feel like listening to someone's day, but you know it's the right thing to do and the loving thing to do, so you're going to do this for your best friend. Maybe it'll actually cost you something like money. Now you got to buy him a house. Wow. Okay, so now I have to do this in a new neighborhood that doesn't have German shepherds roaming the premises. So you have to think about what it's going to cost, but then what is your benefit? So now you have a life partner, you have somebody to care for you, to care that you're alive or not, someone to help you with the laundry, someone to share travel experiences with, someone who can tell you their day, and you can feel like you're an honored person and have some purpose by helping them sort out some details. So these same things that when you're upset with this person sometimes can feel like costs, and you're like, oh, and now I have to do your dry cleaning, and I have to wake you up in the morning, and I have to clean the kitchen, can be rewards the next day. You're like, well, I get to stay home and really just keep the house and make sure that, this person gets off to work on time, and that's really a blessing and great. So this is one of those old school like pro and con lists. What's good about the relationship versus what's bad about the relationship. And if it's too lopsided, then people will usually try to move around. But these things are so subjective, they're framed. And I'm giving you the guns for this one because this is something that largely happens in your own intrapersonal communication. It is super dangerous relationship wise to make a pro and con list or activate the social exchange theory and to tell your communication partner, here are all the things that I do for you. here's all the stuff that you do for me, and look at what this list looks like. You're not doing enough. So we're going to have to divide this up. You're going to have to sweep more. You have to tell your mom to go home. You're going to have to get off the video game. I bought you a PS5 and you can't even take the trash out. Like, what are we doing? So we can have one of those reconciliation moments. We can have a moment where you talk about maybe you're not getting your needs met, or that person is having that conversation with you. But when you really hardcore, like put it on a list, it is realer than real. And we have to be ready to hear our own list come back to us in a way that maybe we're not comfortable with, because it's not a universal thing, it's perception. So if you think that you're helping this person by ironing their clothes, taking them to the dry cleaners, maybe waking them up in the morning, texting them at lunch to make sure that they ate, talking to this person about birthdays and anniversaries and helping them to remember, then that person's perception may be like, oh my God, he's always bugging me, like always, like treats me like a child. I can't be responsible to wake myself up in the morning. You're always waking me up like 10 minutes early. You told me my clothes were all shabby and wrinkled. So now you make me send them to the dry cleaner. And then, you begrudge and say, oh, I'm doing all this stuff for you. But you created all these circumstances through trying to fix me. You're like, oh, now it's Plex. We're in a right and true argument. So our social exchange theory can happen during a relationship, of course, several times. Let's say that this person is your best friend from third grade to seventh grade. And by the time you get to seventh grade, you're like, bro, you're always taking my notes. Like always, always, like you never stay awake in class. You never, are doing anything that's reciprocal. I say, come on, let's ride bikes. You can't go. It's always a mess with you. You're always in trouble. Your shirt even smells. Like, what's going on? And then you find out in seventh grade that that person unfortunately doesn't have a great home life and is not being cared for correctly, and it changes your perception. So you're like, all right, that's not that person's fault that they're kind of, sometimey in that way, or that they don't have it together. Let's help. And then that same person that's your best friend from seventh grade and the rest, let's go seventh grade to 12th grade. They're like, all right, so now my beef isn't with any of those things that we discussed when we were kids, because that wasn't your fault. But come on now. Now we're staying in an apartment together. You got emancipated, you're 16, you're working at the Sonic, we're getting things done, and you still are staying out too late. You're not taking care of your studies. You're not even going to graduate on time. What are we going to do? And so then that's a problem. You're feeling like you're being, pulled down by this person in another way. So we can have our own incidents that are throughout a relationship that we have to come sort of to the social exchange and decide whether it is costing me more mentally, even financially or physically, to be in this relationship than it is to not be in the relationship. So is it better to just not be in the same type of relationship with this person, and you'll feel better about it? When we are doing this before we get into a relationship, because we just talked about when you're several points during your relationship, this can happen. But you can also look at someone and they look like problems. Has it ever happened to you that you've seen a person and you're like, oh yeah, he's really cool, and then you looked at him and you're like, oh no, but that looks like I'm gonna have to fight everybody. Okay, so that does not look like it's gonna be a fun experience. He looks like he's kind of like, a little bit suave, but more like interested in himself. And I think his eyebrows are, in a style. Like, is that a perm? Like, what are we doing? So you feel like maybe that person is high maintenance, or is going to come with baggage, or maybe you find out this person doesn't speak the same language that you speak, or it has like a long distance between you and this person. So you met this person in Houston and they say, oh, I'm only going to be here just for the winter break. I'm from out of town. You're like, oh, you don't live in Dallas, do you? Or Austin? And like, oh, no, actually, I live in Ireland. Oh, okay, cool. All right, yeah, I don't want those problems. Like, I don't want to have to figure out what the long distance bill is going to be, or what the time changes there, or talk to your mom and her accent makes me, feel like fancy and I have to sit up straight. Like, I don't want to do all that. And so we can do that before we ever get into a relationship and decide it's not for us. We can say, nope, it looks like it's going to be problems, so I choose no. And then we can do it after as well. Maybe before you got into a relationship, you thought this is tenable, this makes sense that we would be friends. Then you had a whole cool relationship, everything was fine. Then you kind of grew apart, and then in hindsight, after the relationship has been terminated, you think to yourself, she was kind of using me. She always wanted to carpool, but she never drove. She never gave me gas or anything. She kind of like always took my notes, and she took my man, and then she took my mom for vacation and didn't invite me. I guess that was a little problematic. So social exchange theory can go on before you're in a relationship, several times during it, and after as well. So it's a cost benefit analysis. Questions or comments about anything we discussed so far? All right, the two theory below are two that we've already covered, so you can just read through those as a recap if you like, with the interpersonal needs theory and the social penetration theory. And it brings us now current to what we call dialectical theory. In the same vein as social exchange, when you're kind of weighing the cost benefits, we have already solidified our types of relationships as origins. So, a relationship of circumstance, it started as a relationship of circumstance, or a relationship that started as one of choice. And we already talked about last class how those things can interplay or overlap. Remember, we said, for instance, that this person could have been born your brother. That is a circumstance. You didn't have a choice. And that person just happened to be your sibling, but then you choose for this person to be your best friend, or this is the person that's your closest confidant. So that's a relationship of choice on top of it. Or the opposite, you can choose, let's say, a partner. Let's say that you choose a husband, wife, or a partner, and then y'all have a baby, and now you're parents together. So you circumstantially are parents over this kid. Even if you chose to have a kid, you're circumstantially parents of this here kid, of this kid that's here. When we get into dialectical theory, we're further defining or subdividing types of relationships based on, or excuse me, I apologize, let me go back. Not types of relationships necessarily, but themes or tones that are in relationships. And they evolve into three pair sets that always stay together. You're getting the guns for dialectical theory because these partners are in three sets, and these things are always contrasts of one another. So they're contradictions, or you can think of them as sites on a continuum. So you have like the black over here and the white over here, the yes over here and the no over there. So they're contrasts or contradictions in that way. A dialectic is not the same as a dialect in speech necessarily. So we're not talking about like someone's accenture, the way that they enunciate. But we're talking here as a dialectic. That prefix di and elect talks about really a theme or a tone, such as a language, but it's discussing to us that we have really a vibe or an energy to whatever this relationship is. Let's look at the pair sets and it'll become a little more clear. When we are determining if we want to be in a relationship with this person, we have to discuss with this person, but firstly in our own brains, how we will be in relationship with this person. So if you say, this person is my best friend forever, and then another person sitting next to you says, I have a best friend forever too. Okay, cool. What's that? Well, what do you and your best friend do? Oh, we don't do anything together. She lives in Ireland, so we text each other every once in a while, but she's just like always been there for me. Every time I post something, she's the first person to like it. We exchange pictures all the time. We even did FaceTime one time, and she is just like my best friend. And the other person's looking like, you have a best friend that's on another continent? Y'all never lived in the same states? No, we never met in person. Well, then how is that your best friend? And so that person has like a judgment or feelings that best friendship is supposed to look like a certain thing, or it's supposed to be operationalized a certain way. And then that person who is totally aghast at what this person's best friendship looks like, that same person will be like, yeah, my best friend and I live together, so we have matching tattoos, we have matching wigs, we stood in each other's quinceañeras, each one of us dated the other one's brother. Isn't that crazy? We're going on vacation this year like we do every single year. Our moms are best friends too, so we're going to go get boba on Thursday, just all the moms, and a spa day and all those things. She helped to pay my car note, and that was the cool thing because I bought her a car for graduation. You're like, wow, are y'all accepting applications? Because I too would like to be a best friend of this group. So it's going to look different. And so these dialects talk to us in the dialectical theory about how you make your relationship. And the first pair set that we have is connection versus autonomy. So if you want to be connected with someone, you want the title. This is my best friend forever, or this is my boyfriend or my girlfriend or my romantic partner. You want a title. You want to make sure that that's solidified so everybody who runs up will know that's me right there. Okay, so that is my friend, that's my partner, that's the one that you're going to have a problem with me if you have a problem with that person. All right, so you want the title if you're connected. You want this other person to feel reciprocally as you do. So you want this person to have that same energy. It is not okay enough to assume that this person considers you their best friend. That has to have already been sorted out. We are best friends. And so when another person comes up and starts talking and I'm upset, you're not going to pat me and tell me, oh, I just have to talk to her really quick. No, you don't, because I'm your best friend and I'm going through something right now. So connection means that there is a bond, there is something that's mutually agreed upon, there is a set of criteria that you're supposed to mind in order to be best friends. For us to be best friends, I need to talk to you every day. I need you to text me, at least just make sure I'm alive, at least once every 3 days. I need you to walk me to class. I need you to buy me a chicken strip basket. I need you to do this, this, that. And then you define your roles of what happens if you're connected. But if we're autonomous on the other end of the polar, autonomy talks to us about self governance. And that means to us that you don't answer anybody. You don't have to buy anybody anything. You don't have to call this person your best friend. I don't really believe in titles, and I'm in charge of deciding what I call this person. And we're not in negotiation about it at all. This person can't tell me what to do. I don't have to care if they're living or dead. I don't have to check on them. If they tell me that they're having a bad day, I'll be like, yeah, so did I. I'm supposed to care about that. Like I have me to care about. And so it's really more of a self-centering and a self-governing if we're autonomous. And there's some people that will say, well, if I'm in a relationship, that doesn't mean I have to buy anybody anything. And it doesn't mean that I have to like check in with them. And it doesn't mean that I have to go get them on the side of the road. But don't you want to? So autonomy means that you want to, that you have the sentiment or the feeling that you have a connection with this person if you are connected with them. But if you're autonomous, you don't even feel that way about it. All right, so think about the concept of a person that's in your life that if you see them struggling with something, let's say that you see them struggling with a package or to hold something or a bag, and you don't have that thing in your psyche, you don't have that thing in your schema that says, "Oh, that person's in peril. I need to go and help them out with this thing." You don't feel like that about them. You're like, "Good luck. I hope it works out. Oh, I hope that's not my cheesecake. Don't drop it." And that's about it. So connection means that you want to feel of service and of use to this person, and you want to be served, and you want usefulness to come to you. Or for autonomous, you're like, I'll just do it myself. I'm doing everything myself. I don't need anybody. I don't care if that person needs me or not. I'm not checking in. I don't need any titles. I'm not accepting your title. We're not negotiating this thing. So the first pair set of a dialectic is connection versus autonomy. Then we have openness versus closeness, and this one goes more quickly when it's just, do you want to be honest with the person, tell them all your deep, dark secrets, self disclose, as we discussed? Or on the opposite side, do you want to be more closed off, not talk to this person, not really tell them your business? And then think about how we flip it for the other. Do you want a person who's going to be open with you and be honest with you and tell you the truth? Or do you want somebody that just kind of fluffs and flatters and makes you feel better? Or do you want someone that's closed off and not to burden you with their conversation or tell you the deep, dark secrets or not to disclose about themselves? Remember those lopsided relationships that we were talking about? So it can be that you want to run your mouth. You're me, and you're going to talk all about your business and what happened in class today, and the German Shepherd's outside, and blah, blah, blah. And the other people will be like, sis, if I'm not even going to turn my camera on, like, what do I care about the story about the German Shepherd? Just not interested. Closed off. Just give me the content. That's it. You're not going to talk. You don't have anything to say. This conversation is not engaging you in a certain way. But if we're in a relationship, we have to think about what implications that communication preference has. So if we want to be more loquacious and we want to disclose, then we also have to make space for that other person to give us their information and to want to disclose. If we want to be closed off and not really share and say anything, when that person is kind of sketchy about it, private, and is not telling you the business, then we can't really say anything. It would be hypocritical if we were closed off and we didn't share, but we expected that person to share. That's what people have as a problem with their parents. Or think about the concept of your parents. Could your parents go through your room, go through your stuff, ask you all these questions, and let me be in my mommy's top drawer? It would go down. If I went into my parents' room and tried to look for something or dig for something, say, what are you doing? Oh, I was just trying to find them. Okay, well, ask me. I'll go get it. Okay, sorry. They can be in your business, but you can't really be in their business. And that's a superior subordinate relationship that's based off of biology or kinship and that circumstance, which automatically places that person in a point or positionality of authority. But if we're in relationship, as we're discussing here, we're really supposed to be peers. So there's not supposed to be one person that's in charge that they can ask all the questions, they can demand these answers, or they can set the tone and determine whether you're going to be quiet or not. But we have to understand the other person has agency, which means the power to choose and to decide what they disclose and what they choose not to as well. And then the last pair set is novelty versus predictability. When something is novel, it's spontaneous, it's fun, it's fly by night, it is having a great time and unplanned and just this is a blast. And then when something's predictable, it can be reliable, trustworthy, steadfast, but can also come off as a little bit boring. So in your relationship, do you want to not plan anything? Do you want to just see where life takes you? Just go and catch a plane to wherever has, bystander, or excuse me, not bystanders, or they standby flights available. We're just going to go wherever it is that we can go. Doesn't matter how much it costs. We're not going to, pay the rent on time. We'll just get it done by the time the landlord knocks. And it's like ice cream, So look in the grocery store and you'll see the sign that says ice cream and other novelties. And that's stuff like popsicles and, fruit bars and other frescas. And they're not designed for nutritive value. Like no one thinks you're going to get your caloric needs for the day out of a strawberry shortcake ice cream. But instead, it's just for fun. It's just because it's cold. So it's temporary, doesn't last long, just tastes good. It's fun. But then Mr. Predictability is there in the water aisle. Okay, so gotta have water, gotta have it to live, can't dispute it. If you always just pay your rent whenever, are you gonna have a house to live in still? If you just fly to somewhere crazy and don't think about it, will you have a job when you get back? Like if there can be a friend that you have that's kind of chaos, and that's your novel friend. That's your friend that's fun to go to the club with, it's fun to hang out with, it's fun to go with this party with, but is she really going to take you to the airport? Or is he going to be there for you when it's time to pay the rent? And that's going to be the predictable person that's going to do that. So in these 3 pair sets, and let me take some questions: connection versus autonomy, openness versus closeness, and novelty versus predictability. Questions or comments firstly just about those pair sets and the types of relationships that are defined by each. You want to have anything at all? Alrighty. In those pair sets, and if you do, okay, thank you. And if you do, put in the chat or unmute yourself. In those pair sets, it's important that we know that, again, these things happen like in our own brain, that we think, do we want a relationship that's like this, or do we want a relationship like that? And we can manage those dialectics by doing what we call compartmentalization. So let's say that you don't want to be bored for the whole rest of your life, meeting with the same people, eating the same food, going to the same restaurants, hearing the same stories, looking at the same dogs out of the window, and you're like, man, this is so boring. And you want something spicy and new and fun. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and get a new relationship partner every 3 days, but you can try to make something feel novel with that same person. You can say, alrighty, I have to keep a job. We have to pay rent on time. So let's make sure we have our rent paid on time. Let's have an account that's just devoted to spontaneous travel. And even though we're calling it spontaneous, we will make sure that we have time off work. We've got a 3-day weekend, and then we'll go to the airport and just go wherever it takes us. So you can have a piece of that, a piece of something that's novel in that relationship, in the larger relationship that's predictable. Openness versus closeness, we can do the same thing. We can say, I'm going to tell you everything that I know about me, and I'm going to hear everything that you want to tell me about you. And that person says, okay, well, what happened when y'all went to the bachelorette party in Las Vegas? And you're like, okay, here's the thing. So it's not really my story to tell, okay, because it wasn't my party. I was just an attendee. And so I can tell you that we had a good time. I didn't spend too much money. No one is looking for me in Clark County, and I'm back in one piece, okay? And I can't really describe the other events that are there for you. So you can tell that person you're not ready to talk about it. You don't want to talk about that one specific thing. Here is what I can tell you. And it just depends on really what the content is that we are avoiding or not wanting to say. So if it's something that's privatized because it really is your friend's experience, or you don't feel comfortable sharing it, we want to be able to communicate that to the other person, and hopefully they'll understand. So we just want to do it in a tactful way. So we don't want to say, that's not your business. We can say, hey, I know that I wish I could tell you like detail for detail, but we kind of made a deal that, what happened in Vegas was going to stay in Vegas. So I'll tell you a couple of stories, but some will have to get out of me when I'm 90 years old. So you can kind of make it cheeky and fun, or you can tell a person, I'm not comfortable talking about that thing, and then hope they will understand it. And then connection versus autonomy, that one's a little more difficult to compartmentalize, because once you have the title and you have that person's expectations and you know what the connection is supposed to look like, if you're still out there moving as if you're autonomous, that's going to be a humongous problem. It's even the opposite. Like, let's say that you're autonomous, y'all don't have any labels, you're not necessarily best friends, but you're giving best friend sort of treatment to this person, then they may get used to it, take it for granted, and not really reciprocate it because they're used to just that's how your personality is. So that one's a little more difficult to compartmentalize, because we're either together or we're not, we're either best friends or we're not, we're either, in a bond with each other or we're not. Okay, so the we're not is the one we have to be careful of. Lastly, for this day, and before we do the preview, I'm gonna give you the guns for a couple of things because we're gonna be stopping the recording pretty soon. Firstly, before we get into conflict, back up, and hopefully y'all did your homework and watched the Terminator 1 or the Terminator 2. So back up to the stages of relationship development that will be recapped very quickly on our next class, and the relationship disillusion steps, where we said that these are the procedures that we go through in relationships of choice and deciding that we want to be in a relationship with a person. And then if it happens, if it is unfortunately, if we are no longer in that role. So we said that we initiate, experiment, intensify, integrate, bond, and then we can unfortunately go through differentiation, circumscribing, stagnation, avoidance, and termination. And when we terminate, that means that it could be a Terminator 1 or a Terminator 2 situation. And for anyone who has seen those old school movies from like 84, I guess was the first one that came out, it can be one of those things where your breakup tears up the whole club. So you're sad, you're eating too much ice cream, you hate this person's guts, you're, casting curses onto them, you're talking about them bad. It was just the worst thing that ever happened. Now your credit is ruined, your German Shepherd has been let out, everything is wrong. Or it could be a Terminator 2 situation where you're like, I am so happy that is over. Okay, I know that it was for the best. We had some good times, but it was shaky there at the end. And that song is always going to remind me of that person. I'm always going to love you a small way, but I'm so happy that you're not up in here anymore. So we can terminate and it be like an okay thing, or it can be the worst thing, or it can be like really, really good news that you're not in that relationship. And your perception of that may even change through time afterward. So please revisit those things. Also, please remember that your quiz on is it nonverbal communication? I think your quiz on nonverbal communication is today, and you will complete that by 11:59 p.m. Now, on to conflict. We just get a quick definition of conflict and understanding that all these things have to be in the criteria in order for it to truly be called a conflict in interpersonal speech communication. This means that you could be involved in tomfoolery or shenaniganery, or you could have plex, or you could have a problem or an issue, or there can be a fracas with this person who stepped on your shoes in the club. But if you don't know that person, then it's not truly a conflict in accordance with our definition of speech communications, interpersonal communication conflict. A conflict here means that it has to be an express struggle, meaning at least one of the interpersonal relationship partners has to say, hey, we're having a problem. So, firstly, the struggle has to be expressed. Secondly, the parties have to be interdependent, meaning that what impacts one impacts the other. And this can be something that's humongous and grand, such as if this person wins the lottery, you just won the lottery because they're your partner. Or it could be something such as if this person takes off work and you don't even know them that well, but this is your coworker, that you will have to take this person's shift, or there will be more work for you that day. So we have to have interdependence, and then we have to have one of the following details in perception only of one person. So these things don't even really have to be happening. You just have to think that they are. And they are incompatible goals, scarce resources, and interference from a third party. Incompatible goals just means that we have to want two different things. Let's say that this person wants to be at the party at 7 and I want to be at the party at 9 o'clock. Then what is happening? Well, I just want to be there early so we can get out of there early. And the person's like, I want to get there late so we can stay as late as possible. So you could have like a one-to-one actual goal that's different. Or it could be, I'm going to be exclusive. I want us to be best friends and all the rest of the other people are just associates. And I think that you want to be best friends with absolutely everybody, and you're treating me like I'm the associate. Like, oh, well, that's not really what it is. But if that person feels that way, we're officially in a conflict. Scarce resources means you're running out of stuff, and it can be something that's an actual thing, so tangible. Let me tell y'all, I got two daughters, and when we get down to like the last inch of that Captain Crunch, it goes down in this house. Okay, so they start negotiating cereal. They're like, you ate up all the cereal. Well, yeah, I ate it up because I'm the only one with a job. Oh, okay. So that little job at the gym means that you just get to tear through all the cereal and do all this stuff. So when stuff starts running out, people go bonkers. So if we think that we're running out of time, we're running out of attention, if we're running out of that limerence or that spark that keeps that person engaged with us, something that we feel like we're missing, people start devolving and getting into fusses around scarce resources. And then we have interference from a third party. So it's not that the two of you necessarily have an interpersonal problem with one another, but somebody's mom is in the business, or somebody's dad is hating, or it can be that we are in a long distance relationship and it's difficult for me to remember what time it is in Ireland, so we don't get on the phone as much. And it's the distance itself that's causing us a problem. It could be any of those things. So it's something outside or what we call exogenous of the relationship that is causing a problem. So again, conflict has to have the following definition. Somebody has to at least say that we're having a problem. We have to be connected to each other in a way that what happens to one impacts the other. And at least one of us has to have the perception that we want two different things, which is called incompatible goals, that we're running out of something, which is called scarce resources, or that a third party or something outside of our relationship is intervening and causing turbulence within our relationship. Questions or comments about anything that we discussed so far? Alrighty, please stop me out for 1 second. I just want to show you something that is in the file section right quick before we exit. As I'm transitioning on next class, we're going to start with our conflict resolution strategies, recap the stages of coming together, coming apart, and then become head first into our public speaking unit. All right, so we will have an entire class period that defines for us what is going on with your speech and all that good stuff. I want to show you in the file section really quickly. And remember, you can always ask a question or, you can always ask a question or make a comment as you like. Hopefully you're looking at the file section of Canvas with me right now. Sorry, I didn't get you out of here earlier. It was really the dogs. Let's just blame the German Shepherds. I had to talk about them for a minute. Alrighty, but we'll try for next class while y'all are staying warm. We are going to be constructing for our first speech assignment, public speaking assignment, an informative speech. And when we are talking informatively, we are just telling the audience something. And we will be the audience here live in Webex. And we will use what we call a full sentence outline template to type into this template every word that we plan on saying, exactly as we plan on saying those words in a certain order. And we will use this template to tell the audience about our trip to the Grand Canyon, or what we love about tacos, or what you do at your job, or the relationship that you and your cousin have as, Forex members, or we can talk about an anime that we like, or how to get discounts on shoes. Anything that you want to talk about, you get to select your own topic and your own subject, impart it into this outline. There is no essay required. It is just the full sentences that you're plugging into this outline, and you're going to perform that speech in 3 to 5 minutes time. So your range is the speech should be no shorter than 3 minutes and no longer than 5 minutes. And you're going to use this information in the file section to help you out. On next class, we're going to go through the template, and notice that it's titled Outline Template. And when it's time for you to submit your assignment, you're just going to click Download, type your sentences directly into this document that we will learn how to use on next class. And you're going to, if you'd like to, switch your speech over to index cards or note cards so you don't have like a whole piece of paper in front of your face on the camera, and your camera will have to be on for the duration of our class period. And you're going to deliver your speech based off of what you have typed here. All right, so we have this outline template that you're going to type directly into with full sentences, every single word that you plan on saying exactly as you plan on pronouncing those words. For instance, you're not going to type, I will tell them my name is Emily, but instead you'll type, hi, comma, my name is Emily. So you're going to type it exactly as you plan on saying it in the first person. So we're going to look at the template over the weekend if you get a chance. Look at the outline example, because we have an example of what an A looks like from a previous student when it's all populated. And so it might take a little bit of time to pop up. Apologies. But when you look at it yourself, you'll be able to see the full sentences that are put forth. So we're not going to belabor the time because I know we got to get you out of here. And there'll be another one that is, down here that's labeled Speech Content Guide. So it tells you what information to plug into each one of these bricks. And that's what we will lecture on next class. So we will say, for example, for your introductions, Roman numeral 1, you're going to greet your audience by saying, hey, what's up, y'all, and tell them your name. Attention getter. We need a sentence here that is going to engage the audience. Credibility statement. This is your ethos. You're going to say something in this moment that is going to exert your authority to speak on this topic. So the 3 files that you're concerned with over the weekend, if you want to get a leg up on the public speech that we're going to construct, then you're going to look at the outline template, you're going to look at the outline example, and you're going to look at the speech content guide in the files section. Questions or comments before I stop the recording and y'all go out in the cold and catch these dogs because they're bothersome. Anyone have anything at all? All right, I'm stopping the recording.